Okay, now we're going to look at adding in music behind our app. So we're going to start and create a new project. Just a single view app. Call this one music. Create. And the idea of this app is just to have some music playing in the background over one of our view controllers. So we'll open up our main storyboard. We'll have our first view controller, and then we'll have our second view controller, which is the one that we want the music to play in. So we'll just put a simple button in to link, so just to control drag across. And this will be the view controller that has our music. So we'll put a few features in there. So we might put a volume control. So if we slide down here, see all the elements that we can add in. We've got a slider that we can put in for volume control. And we might put in another button that we'll have for play music. And another one over here that we'll have for stop music. Stick that in the middle. Move those down to the bottom so they don't take up as much room. That way we've got a play, a stop, and a volume in the middle. We might just put a little label over the center for volume. So we've got our layout worked out. Now we need to add in our code. To do that, we need a .swift file for this view controller. So we go new, file, Cocoa Touch class, view controller, we'll call this one music. And we go next, create. And we need to assign this music view controller to our storyboard view controller. The way we do that is click our view controller, go across to our customs class identity inspector, click this little arrow, and we should scroll down and find our music view controller. And what that does is that links this to our .swift file. And this is where we're going to do our coding. So to do our coding, we need to import a couple of different features, and they come from our AV Foundation library. So what we need to do is go import AV Foundation, and that gives us access to a whole lot of elements to control sound and music. So what we want to then do is create a few instances or variables that we will be able to edit or play with. So what we want to do is early on in the view controller, create a variable var, and we'll call this one player. So this is going to be a case of creating an AV audio player, and we're just calling that our player, and that allows us to basically create what we want and then edit and add songs to, change the volume to, but that'll all be through this function called the player. So to do that, we'll go into our override function viewDidLoad. So we want our music to start playing straight away. To do that, there's a few strange little bits we need to add in. So we need to create what's known as an audio path. So we go let audio path equal. And this is where we just need to follow a bit of convention here. It's bundle.main.path. Select the one that says resource, and then we can put in here the string. That's going to be our name. This one we'll just call it my song. And then the type of file, these ones are MP3. So that means we're creating a path to a song which is titled My Song, and it's a type of file called an MP3. So now we need to do something with our audio path. So we're going to do a do loop, a do function. So we're going to go do let my sound which is another instance we're creating, equal, and we're going to try. So this means that we're going to try and load something. It allows us to, if it doesn't work, have a catch function a bit later on. This is called a do catch. And we've got try, it's going to be AV audio path, audio player, contents of, and it's not quite, sometimes when it doesn't come up the way you want, just backtrack a bit, audio player, open the brackets, and then look for it. So we've got a contents of, and we want the URL. So we want that one. Click return. We're going to type in our URL, and it's going to be URL brackets file URL with path name. Now often these things will come up. This one it's not. And then we send our audio path, which is what we created above. Put an exclamation mark to force that to happen. We've got a couple of errors here. So let's just check what we've got here. Throws and unhandled. So we need to, we've got a try, therefore we need a catch in there later. And we'll put that in just a second. In fact, we might just stick it down here so we know it's got it. So when you do a try, you do need a catch afterwards. And we will just close those brackets there. So we've got a do catch. We've got a try. And then in that try, we are going to do a few things. We're going to, with our player, which we've created up here, which is our audio player, we're going to go equals my sound, which is what we just tried to create here. And that's now loaded my sound, or the song, into the player. And then we're going to go player dot play, and that will create the function play on our player, and hopefully play our sound. So that will hopefully play our sound, but at the moment we don't actually have our song over here. We need to drag that in, and the way we do that, we've got a song I've just added. It's got the Nutcracker Suite, so it was free. Drag your song into here. Copy items if needed. Actually, we might go cancel. To make it simple, instead of it being the Nutcracker song, I'm going to change that to my song, because that's what it's going to look for. And it's probably easier to do this out of Xcode. So you've called the song you want to play my song, drag it in, drop it, make sure the copy items if needed is selected. And now we've got the MP3 file in there, which it's trying to look for. But you do need to make sure that this name, my song, is exactly the same as the .mp3 file that you're wanting to play. And what hopefully will happen is this will start playing the song. We haven't loaded our buttons yet, and we'll show you how to do that in just a minute. There's our button. We click this. There our music is playing. Now at the moment, neither of these work because we haven't connected these up, but I'll show you how to do that right now. So we'll quit our simulator. We'll come back to our folder here, and we're going to use this little button over here, which allows us to split our screen. It allows us to have one screen with our .swift file open and one screen with our main storyboard open, and that's really useful. So what we'll do is we'll click our split, and you'll see now I've got the two screens. If you don't have the correct file, you can click these 4 squares, and that will allow you to open recent files that we've had open here, or you can just click through and they'll rotate from this screen to this screen and then away. So if I wanted to go back to the storyboard moved from here over to here. It does take a little while to load. Oh, that one didn't even load. Just go to recent. We'll bring up storyboard. So now we can do a couple of things where we can bring a button across to here. So we've got a play button. We're going to control drag that play button over. This allows us to do a couple of things. We can either have it as an outlet or an action. Now we want it to be an action because we want it to respond to somebody pushing it. So we're going to put action and we'll give it a name. This one we'll call play. We hit connect and see we've got this function now that will be called when anyone pushes this play button. So that makes it quite straightforward, just dragging that across. Make sure when you do drag it across, you'll get that little black thing coming. I'll just drag this one across so you can see what's going on. See how we've got this insert action outlet or outlet collection. If you take it to somewhere you can't drop it in, that option will disappear. So if I try and drop it up here, it's not actually in the class and it won't let me drop it in there. So just make sure you move it around. I don't want to drop it into another action, you want to drop it below or above. Now I've got another one. Make sure you change it across to action. This one will be stop. We'll go connect. Now we've got two functions, one for play, one for stop. You know they're linked to the buttons when the circles next to them have a little black dot on them. If you scroll over top, it'll show you the button that it's linked to, which is quite handy. The other element we want is this slider. Now we need to create an instance of this slider so we can refer to it. So we drag that across, we drag that up here, and we're just going to create an outlet this time. And this time we'll just call this vol. And that creates an instance, and this is now referred to as vol. And we will use that as we change the volume. So again, we want to make a function from this. Let's control drag. We want this time to be an action, so when they click on the volume, anything in this function will be called, and we'll call this one volume just for simplistic sake. So this is when slider clicked. This one will be called when stop is pressed, and this one will be called when play is pressed. Now I'm just commenting there, just put a double backslash and that will be green. That computer basically ignores anything in green, but it's really helpful for you understanding your code. So it's really useful to comment as you go along. Now controlling these is really simple because we've got this library using AV Foundation and this other thing called an audio player. It gives us a whole lot of functions that are really simple to use. So the first one is our stop. We've already declared our player. It's just going to be player dot. That allows us to add a whole lot of functions with that. And we've got a stop function. And it's as simple as that. The player dot play function. And that will just play the player. The slider, this one a little bit more complicated but not very much. We use our player again, dot set volume, and then the float value is actually going to be our vol value. So our vol value. And then our duration, we'll just put 1 there. So what that's getting is the value of this slider, which we've called vol. And it's setting that to our volume. So there we have it. We have a view controller that plays a song. Now we usually like a back button there, so we're going to put a button which will go back to our original screen. Let's check that's all working. Okay, so here it is loaded. If we click play, we should get our music playing. If we hit stop, our music stops. Play again. we can adjust our volume with our slider. So there we are. There, our view controller now plays music. If I go back, you'll notice it's still playing. You may not want that function. So I'll show you a little tip to make sure it stops. I can click stop there. Stop's not doing what I want there. Where we want it to stop once our thing changes. So we'll stop that music. So you would have seen a slight error there when we had our change. It didn't stop playing the music, and that obviously gets annoying if you go through your whole app and the music just keeps playing and playing. You went back to the screen and it didn't stop it when you hit stop because it created a new variable each time that view controller is accessed. So we need to have a little bit in there to stop that happening, and I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so we've found the error where our music doesn't stop playing. So what we want to do is have, whenever we leave this view controller, it to stop. So we need to create something with this back button that actually stops our player before we go to another screen. Of course, if you want it playing over your whole app, you can leave it as is. But I'll show you how you can add a little bit in to change to stop the play. So we're going to edit this to go, let's delete our back segue. I'll show you what to do here. So we go control drag across and we're going to create an action for when we hit the back button. Call this one back. We need to make it an action and we will connect. So now when they hit the back button, this function will be called. So when back button is clicked. Now what we want to do here is stop our player. So we go player stop. But we now want to make a segue back to this screen. So we have to call that. So what we do here is we need to create a segue that's not linked to a particular button. Click our view controller, control drag across, show, and this is our segue. This isn't linked to anything particular. I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Oops. Go back to our single screen. Main storyboard. So at the moment, this segue isn't linked into anything. So we need to give it an identifier, which is just a name. So we're going to call this one back. You can call it whatever you wish. So this segue, this link, is now known as the back link. It's got the identifier there. So we need to reference that when the back button is pushed. So what we do is we call a function which is known as perform segue. As you start to type, it may well come up, perform segue with identifier. That's the one we want. The string is whatever we called it. In this case, it was back. It needs to be exactly the same as you wrote it. And then the sender is self. So it's sending from this view controller. And what that means is when you click back, it will call that segue to the first screen, but it will also stop our music from playing. So we run it this time. We can actually get the music to stop when we leave the page. So we go, it starts playing, we can play, we can stop, we can play again. It's now playing. If we leave this page, we don't want it to keep going. This time it stops. So if you want it to play through your whole app, you don't need that back button. But if you do want it to play through just that screen, you do need to make sure that back button has a stop on the player. So there you are. That's how you add music to a view controller or a screen in your app.